On today's episode, I'm kicking off my Halloween-centric episodes by talking about the original Alien movie that started a whole huge franchise and is arguably the best space-based horror movie ever made.
You're looking for a man with no plans or programs, and he always needs a chance to hold hands for romance. Or you're looking for the Luke with an old man or cold hands. It's a creature of the night who heads for his spotlight. I'm here to welcome you to blinded and random reviews. No, nothing when I choose. It's blinded and random reviews.
All right, everyone, welcome to Brandon at Random Reviews, covering one unsystematically chosen topic at a time. If you like listening to a guy talk about arbitrarily chosen subjects in weekly episodes, then look no further. To keep up with the newest content, you can find Brandon at Random Reviews on most major video and audio platforms, as well as all popular social media sites. If you enjoy this, please like and subscribe. I use views as a way to increase the acidity of my dangerously corrosive blood. And of course, as I mentioned, today's movie is Alien, released on June 22nd, 1979, with a runtime of 117 minutes. This movie is rated R by the Motion Picture Association of America, with a budget of $11 million, directed by Ridley Scott. For the writers, we have Dan O'Bannon and Russell Shusett. For the score, we have composer Jerry Goldsmith. And for the cast, we have Sigourney Weaver, who plays Ellen Ripley. She was, of course, in Ghostbusters, and I really fucking love Ghostbusters. Honestly, if it wasn't a comedy, I probably would have covered it this month, but unfortunately, that's not really on the table for me because I don't like to explain jokes. She was also in the movie Galaxy Quest, which is a parody of science fiction movies and TV shows and is very well done and is criminally underrated. But for the same reasons as Ghostbusters, it's a comedy. I'll probably never cover it. And then she was also in Avatar, which is okay. It's not a terrifically amazing movie, and it definitely doesn't leave a lasting impression on you. It's just kind of cool to see all of the effects, but that's about it. Then we have Tom Skerritt, who plays Dallas, and he was, of course, in Steel Magnolias, which was previously covered on this podcast. I was in an episode I did with my sister. I believe the other movie was Fried Green Tomatoes in that episode. He was in Top Gun with Tom Cruise and Val Kilmer. A little more of a bit part in that movie, but it's still memorable. He's got a very distinctive look about him. I don't know, I really just like him. He was also in Contact, which is the kind of movie that had such a great chance of being good, and it just ended up being such a letdown. It was like they didn't want to commit to a real ending, so they kind of left it up to the audience, which I fucking hate. Then we have John Hurt, who plays Kane, and he was in V for Vendetta. He plays the Chancellor Adam Sutler, High Chancellor, I believe is his title, and he plays an evil dictator really well. And honestly, V for Vendetta, I covered it in my first season. It was like a triple movie episode, I believe. I fucking love V for Vendetta. It's so well done, and it really makes you want to be a revolutionary. He was also in Snowpiercer, which is a solid movie. Chris Evans, it's one that I actually covered in like a short video episode. It's about basically a post-apocalyptic world where I think it's like an attempt was made to try and correct global warming, and it had catastrophic consequences that basically covered the world in ice and snow. He was also in Midnight Express, which, by the way, if you ever want to just sit down and you're like thinking to yourself, gosh, what if I could watch the most depressing and upsetting movie possible? Go ahead and put on Midnight Express. I saw it when I was way too young also, so I'm not saying I'm going to rewatch it, but I probably would have thought it was a little better if I was an adult. But I think it's about these guys that get caught smuggling drugs at the airport and they end up in a Turkish prison. And it is horrible. It is just an unpleasant movie. I realize it's very well made and written, but that doesn't mean it deserves to win awards or get great acclaim for it. And then the last of the cast members that I actually have listed, even though there are a few more, Harry Dean Stanton, who plays Brett, and he was in Paris, Texas, which is another painfully boring fucking movie that is like universally acclaimed by critics and a lot of audiences. Like a lot of regular people think that Paris, Texas is really good. It is so fucking slow and it is just not engaging to me at all. And I don't really understand why it's so well regarded, but it is what it is. It's well acted, sure. Okay. That's kind of a given though. Like you need the acting to be good, even in a movie that's not getting critical acclaim. He was also in Red Dawn, the original, with Patrick Swayze and Charlie Sheen. Great fucking movie. Definitely intend to cover it on this podcast soon. For those that don't know, Red Dawn is the movie about a Soviet invasion of the United States on American soil. And basically, it takes place in modern day times in the mid 1980s. It is fucking great. I just really enjoy it, but I'll really get into it when I finally cover it in an episode. And then last but not least, Harry Dean Stanton was in Escape from New York, which is another one that I really enjoy. Have every intention of covering it at some point, maybe not this season, but it's possible. I'll never rule it out. We've got Kurt Russell, Snake Plissken, all this awesome shit. Ernest Borgnine. Oh, God. So good. John Carpenter directing. I'm sorry, I keep talking about it, but I know I'm going to cover it eventually, so I got to stop. For casting notes, the 7 human characters in the film were written as interchangeably men or women, and originally Ripley's character was envisioned as a man. The objective in casting was to ensure that strong actors were all cast because of the few roles that were available. Sir Ridley Scott stated that in casting the role of Ripley, it ultimately came down to Sigourney Weaver and Meryl Streep. The two actresses had been college mates at Yale. I don't know if that tidbit was meant to say roommates or if they were just friends at Yale. Not clear. I want to say they were probably roommates. Who knows? Ultimately, Weaver was offered the job because Streep was mourning the death of partner John Cazale at the time of casting. I can never remember how to pronounce his name. He was the guy that was only in like 3 or 4 movies in his time, and they were all like universally acclaimed and nominated for a bunch of awards, including Best Picture. He was in The Godfather Part 1 and 2. He was in the Dog Day Afternoon, and he was also in, I think, maybe The Deer Hunter or something. I can't remember what the fourth one was for him, but I want to say it was 4 movies. I can't remember for sure. I'd have to look it up, and I'm not going to do that because I'm fucking lazy. Harrison Ford turned down the role of Captain Dallas. He ended up working with Sir Ridley Scott on his next film, Blade Runner, in 1982. When Tom Skerritt first read the screenplay for this movie, he declined to be involved as he was unimpressed with the writing quality and the low budget. After the screenplay was edited and the budget was enhanced, Skerritt was approached again, which prompted him to sign on. Halfway through production, he approached writer and executive producer Ronald Shusett, asking if he could trade his salary for half a percentage point of royalties. For the plot synopsis, after investigating a mysterious transmission of unknown origin, the crew of a commercial spacecraft encounters a deadly life form. For the tagline, this is an iconic, classic tagline. Even if you don't know what it's from, you've probably heard it before, and that tagline is, "In space, no one can hear you scream." Perfect. Perfect fucking tagline. It sets it up as a horror movie, and it is amazing. I fucking love this tagline. Alright, guys, let's just dive right into the plot of this motherfucking movie. So, this movie has one of those slow fucking opening credit sequences that only exists in movies from decades ago around this era, and it feels like it goes on forever as the letters of the word alien slowly are revealed in little pieces. And I'm just going to tell you what these words are that appear on the screen after the credits are done. They just kind of set the tone pretty well. Commercial towing vehicle, the Nostromo, crew, 7. Cargo, refinery processing 20 million tons of mineral ore, course returning to Earth. So the assumption here is that this giant cargo ship is hauling a huge amount of some kind of valuable substance that was retrieved from space somewhere, but it really isn't relevant where from. We see this long scrolling shot of the massive ship that they're on, like in Star Wars. That will be the main setting of our lighthearted adventure. It cuts to the inside of the ship where you see all of these dark corridors and dimly lit rooms, and it just seems like it might be a nice little place to catch up on some cryo sleep. It shows a command center of sorts that begins to turn on seemingly by itself, and the screens start flickering on and begin beeping and whatnot. Then it does one last little beep and stops, and suddenly the lights around the ship just start to turn on. Our view focuses on a door that suddenly opens in that cool space type way where it slides up into the ceiling. Can you imagine how weird it would be if space doors just swung open like regular doors on buildings? Anywho, it is revealed that the room behind the door had the 7 crew members sleeping peacefully inside of these strange pods with transparent glass covers. This suspended hibernation is referred to in this universe as stasis. Slowly, the crew begins to awaken and get up, and before you know it, they're all gathered around some table eating. A couple of the guys are smoking cigarettes, which might seem wild to any of my more youthful listeners. Fun fact, smoking was only banned on domestic flights in the late 80s and was only banned completely by the FAA in 2000, which is just bizarre to me. It did not seem like that would have been a thing still, but it was. It was just most people weren't on non domestic flights, so they probably didn't see a whole lot of it. Parker and Brett discuss something about how much they'll be getting for bonuses from this trip, and they both seem to agree that they deserve a little more than what they're going to get. Parker is played by Yaphet Kotto, and Brett is played by Harry Dean Stanton. Yaphet Kotto is memorable for me because he played a character named Kananga in Live and Let Die, which is not only Roger Moore's first outing as James Bond, but also one of the weirder Bond movies of all time because it takes place in New Orleans and has a lot of plot elements that seem foreign to a Bond film. Just things like tarot card reading and voodoo and all of these really strange tribal seeming things like totem poles. I don't know. Also, by the way, that was Jane Seymour's first big movie. She plays a tarot card reader that James bones by manipulating her with a trick set of tarot cards, and in no way is that problematic for him as a character that he did that. So, anyway, back to Alien. Tom Skerritt plays Dallas, who is the captain of the Nostromo, and he tries to diffuse the conversation of the two engineers arguing about pay by telling them that they get whatever bonus they're contracted for, which I'm sure was a comforting response for their complaints. But Dallas gets called away as some kind of alarm goes off indicating that he has received some kind of message. What I love about this movie is that even though it feels very futuristic in so many ways, a strange thing is that it is so futuristic that it portrays these people working on a spaceship as being so casual about that concept. Like it's just, it is what it is, I guess. No one is particularly professional or dressed up more than they would be at a lot of blue collar jobs. But also, it's crazy that computers were so primitive in these movies that they almost always feature black screens with green print and look nothing like computers ended up looking within very little time. Dallas heads into a room where he sits in a chair and looks at a very MS DOS looking computer interface. The rest of the crew is getting seated in their various positions around the ship. So I'm just going to go ahead and give you the crew names and rankings, and they are as follows. Dallas is captain, Kane is executive officer, Ripley is warrant officer, Lambert is navigator, Ash is the science officer, and Parker and Brett are the engineers. Oh, also, Jones is the ship cat, obviously, but that goes without saying because ships always have a designated cat hanging out, keeping the peace, and I dare you to name even 45 movies that have ships without cats. They also refer to the ship's computer computer as Mother, which reminds me of Buster from Arrested Development. As the crew begins to figure out where they are in space, they realize that for whatever reason, they're not in their own home system where Earth is, like they expected, and they aren't really sure why. They were under the impression that when they were awoken from stasis, it was because they were actually nearing home, but that's not the case. Dallas has them gather back where they were eating initially, and he informs them that they are only halfway home. He says Mother interrupted their trip because she received a transmission of unknown origin, which is one of the reasons that she has been programmed to interrupt trips. Ripley and the others are surprised that they received a transmission while they're seemingly out in the middle of nowhere, even by space standards. Dallas says that it's some sort of beacon repeating in 12-second intervals, but it's unclear if it's coming from a human or some other life form. But I'm sure whatever it is, it's probably super peaceful, so don't even worry about that. Parker argues that it's not his job to get caught up in some kind of rescue side quest or whatever, and says he thinks that he should just be paid extra if he's expected to do all this shit. Ash shuts him down by pointing out that their contracts specifically say that they are obligated to investigate possible intelligent life on their voyages, and if they refuse, they are forfeiting their money for the trip, which obviously Dallas reiterates that, and he says that they're required to do what they're being asked to do, and Parker lightheartedly accepts because he really has no fucking choice at this point. I mean, he's going to have to give up his money if he keeps refusing. Everyone is just kind of getting into position to make the ship approach to the planet where the transmission came from. They take their little shuttle away from the main ship toward this mystery planet, and they hit some turbulence and stuff as they descend. They end up having a pretty rough and abrupt landing, and honestly, I would say that's an opposing argument for this policy of investigating potential intelligent life transmissions. Like, you would have no idea what to expect on any random planet regarding how difficult it would be to land alone, let alone any other possible contingencies that would come up. Then it seems like they kind of lose all of their communication channels and they know they probably can't take back off that easily with the unpleasant conditions outside going on. Dallas, Kane, and Lambert all throw on their spacesuits and go outside together while the others stay back. And it's just aggressively dark and windy on this planet, and they're all having trouble seeing to get around, but that's definitely an aesthetic throughout this film. Parker and Brett are being complete dicks to Ripley about getting their full shares and are clearly just trying to do the bare minimum to not have to forfeit any of their money. Ripley tells them to fuck off, and that's not me converting her words into the way I talk. That's actually what she says to them because basically, me and Ellen Ripley would be total besties if we existed at the same time in the same universe. She confirms with Ash that Mother hasn't identified the transmission yet, and she goes to try and see if maybe she can figure it out herself. When she goes to try and figure it out, Mother has deciphered some of the message and has determined that the beacon was not an SOS signal, but rather a warning beacon trying to keep others away, which seems super good because I mean, you follow this message thinking, oh, it's a call for help, and then you find out, oh no, it's a warning and it's telling you not to come here after you've already arrived on the fucking planet. Almost seems like maybe they should have waited to see if the message could be deciphered before they went chasing after it. Anywho, Dallas and the gang go into what I guess is an alien ship on the surface that they believe the transmission came from, and they find this fossilized alien corpse inside, and it looks like it has like a hole in it too, so it's pretty unsettling. They're very reluctant to continue investigating after they find the corpse, but Dallas insists that they carry on since they've already made it this far, and it's like, good thinking, Dallas, you're so fucking smart. Why on earth would we turn back now? I mean, we only found reason to believe that we might die here. Ash starts to have trouble communicating with them or getting a good video feed of what they're looking at as they proceed through the ship. Lambert pretty clearly wants to get the hell out of there, but Dallas and Kane keep searching even though they have no idea what happened to the rest of the crew that would have been with the corpse that they found. Kane finds his way into an even darker cave where it is apparently much warmer, and as he looks around, he finds what appear to be hundreds of very large eggs. He notices a protective layer of mist covering the eggs that reacts when he touches it. Then he slips and falls into the trench where the eggs are. He looks over at one of the eggs and can see movement going on inside it and determines that it is likely organic life inside. Like, very astute observation, Kane. I just figured a robot laid these fucking eggs. As he approaches the egg, the top of the egg flips open like the monster's mouth on the first season of Stranger Things, if you've ever seen it. Suddenly, as he stands there looking at it like a fucking idiot, a creature jumps out of the egg and attaches to his helmet pretty aggressively and basically starts to get inside of his helmet, and it clearly wants to cuddle pretty bad. Dallas and Lambert find Kane and take him back to the shuttle and tell Ripley to let them in. Ripley asks them what's going on, and Dallas explains that the creature attached itself to Kane and they need to get him inside to the infirmary. Now, this is a pretty defining moment for Ripley's character because she doesn't want to let them in, because if they let the creature on board the ship could become infected and endanger all of them, the rest of the crew, anyone on board. But Dallas is a real insistent prick about not following protocol because even though they're supposed to quarantine for 24 hours, Dallas says Kane could die if they wait that long. And it's like, yeah, Dallas, but that rule exists for a reason, even knowing that contingency. Like, people might be able to die in that time period, but it's better that the people quarantined die and don't infect everybody else. But I digress. Dallas ultimately gives Ripley a direct order to open the hatch to let them in, but she doubles down and says she heard him, but the answer is fucking no. Honestly, if you've ever known the right thing to do at work and your boss decided to not do that thing when you suggest it, this movie is really for you. This is like a crown jewel in that experience and relating to this movie. Then, almost instantly, Ash lets them in anyway, like a real fuckwad. It shows them in the infirmary trying to remove Kane's helmet. And when they do, they realize the creature that kind of looks like a fleshy rib cage with claws on each rib and a full spinal cord looking tail hanging from it is completely wrapped around Kane's face. The creature tightens its tail around his neck as they like mess with it. Dallas and Ash attempt to remove the creature from Kane's face by taking a pair of tongs and trying to remove one of the claws, but this only prods the creature to tighten its tail even more around his neck. They leave him on a bed with the creature on his face, and they determine that the creature has lodged itself in Kane's throat as a sort of breathing apparatus that helps him stay alive but in a coma. Then Dallas tells Ash that they have to attempt to remove the creature, but Ash is afraid that it actually may kill Kane to do that. Dallas says he wants to try to cut the creature off and will take responsibility if it ends up killing Kane because they have to do something here. Ash goes on to make a cut on one of the creature's claws, and this gross yellow goopy blood sprays out and melts through the floor like acid, and they're afraid it may eat through the hull of the ship. Dallas rushes out to see if he can find if the acid blood will make it all the way through the hull, but it seems like it's losing its potency and intensity and will not compromise the hull, at least in this instance. Parker makes the comment that it's a remarkable defense mechanism if that's its blood, because you don't dare to try and kill it in a conventional way. So Brett and Parker are eager to get the hell off the planet naturally. Kane is still laying in the infirmary with the creature on his face, and Ash is looking at samples in a microscope. Ripley comes in and asks him what he thinks it is, but he doesn't really seem to know. He says that the creature has an outer layer of protein polysaccharides and it has a habit of shedding its cells and replacing them with polarized silicone, and that this provides resistance to adverse environmental conditions. He mentions that it makes the creature a quote, tough little son of a bitch, and says he's still collating in regard to what his thoughts are on what to do. Ripley calls him out for letting the creature on board, but Ash defends himself by saying he was obeying a direct order. Ripley clarifies that when Dallas and Kane are off the ship, she's the senior officer, but Ash claims he forgot that, and it's like, yeah, okay, Ash. I'm sure you did, bud. She tells him that he also forgot basic quarantine laws, and he says he didn't forget, and she points out that he just blatantly broke them then, which is arguably worse. She tells him that he may have done it for a hope of saving Kane's life, but it put everyone else's lives at risk when he did it, and he doesn't take that particularly well because he's a big bag of dicks who doesn't really take accountability for virtually anything he does. Ash calls Dallas to check out something that's happened with Kane, and Dallas has Ripley come too. The creature has left Kane's face, and they have no idea where it went at all, so the three of them start looking around the infirmary to find it. The creature falls from the ceiling and lands on Ripley, but doesn't really attack her and just lays lifelessly on the floor and appears to not be alive anymore. Ash starts to examine it while Dallas and Ripley watch, and he assumes, as he prods at it, that the creature is likely dead. Ripley's like, well, that's good, and wants to get rid of it, but Ash wants to keep it to have it examined and tested further, but Ripley fears what ramifications there might be in keeping it on board dead if even its blood was so dangerous. But Dallas decides to be a real fucking knob and tell Ash that decision is up to him, even though it 100% should not be up to Ash whether or not to keep this thing. As Ripley and Dallas walk away, she argues with his decision and tells him that it's not the proper procedure and he clearly just doesn't want to deal with this. Dallas asks her what they have to do for remaining repairs to the shuttle, and she says the repairs are pretty much finished, but there are still some things to do. But Dallas thinks the remaining stuff is not that critical, and he clearly wants to get the fuck out of there, so naturally, they start to take off to head back to the main ship. So they have a successful liftoff, and afterwards, they're all sitting around talking, and Parker says that they should freeze Kane since he has some disease and they can just take him to a doctor once they get home. Dallas asserts that Kane will have to go into quarantine, and Ripley says they'll all have to go into quarantine. Lambert tells Dallas that the time it will take to get back to Earth is about 10 months, and Ash interrupts by telling Dallas to come back and see Kane. When they get to him, Kane appears to be alive and well in the infirmary, and then I guess we're about to just roll credits on this silly little misadventure, but I guess I'll watch a bit longer. The crew gathers around Kane and they're asking him how he feels, and he seems like he's doing pretty well, all things considered, but he can't really remember what happened to him. The whole crew is relieved and super complacent almost immediately because they got through the toughest part and now just have to get home, like, thank goodness. They gather and start eating and joking around with each other, but as Kane eats enthusiastically like he's really hungry, he starts coughing and then he starts choking, and the rest of the crew kind of gets on edge. He starts really choking violently and lays back on the table as the crew tries their best to restrain him in any way they can, but they're all struggling and he's out of control. Suddenly, blood kind of spatters on his shirt as if something is coming out of his chest, and it really freaks the crew out pretty bad. Suddenly, a creature busts out of his chest, and it's like a slimy, flesh colored worm looking thing with a scary mouth full of teeth, and it has no eyes. It kind of like squirms around all covered in Kane's blood, and Parker goes to attack it, but Ash tells him not to touch it because obviously its blood is fucking acid. Then suddenly the creature makes a bizarre noise and scurries off the table and just disappears. And I'm going to be real honest with you, the way it looks scurrying across the table is the first time I can say the effects have looked absurd in this movie, which is something to be proud of in a movie made in the 1970s, honestly. Usually special effects were pretty bad around this time. The crew stands frozen in terror and doesn't say anything for a few moments as they don't know what to do now that the creature is clearly loose on their ship. Then, I'm not 100% here, but I think they put Kane's body in a little coffin capsule and jettison him into space. Brett shows off this shocking rod that he developed to allow them to electrocute the creature without breaking its skin. Ash shows them a device he developed to help them figure out when the creature is near that essentially detects movements, but he says it has a disappointingly short range, but it will at least help them get some kind of warning when the creature is nearby. Ash says that it keys off of changes in air density, and it is later said that it has a range of maybe 5 meters. Dallas instructs the crew to split up into separate groups, so naturally, Fred, Wilma, and Daphne are in one group, and Shaggy and Scooby will be in another. But seriously, Dallas, Lambert, and Ash are in one group, and Parker, Brett, and Ripley are in the other. He tells them all to catch the creature in their net and put it in the airlock, and he specifically tells Parker not to try and be a hero out there. It shows Ripley's group find a darkened room where the power has gone out, and Parker manages to get the lights working again. Ripley thinks that she has honed in on the creature and thinks it's hiding in like a little locker, but as they approach the locker with their net, they see the ship cat, Jones, scurry out of the locker and scare the fuck out of them. What I like about this false alarm jump scare is they don't use the score to artificially intensify it and amplify it. It's just the bare bones startle of a false alarm and doesn't really seem forced, unlike so many horror movies that have come out since this movie, where it's just like that's the primary scare tactic is jump scares. And to me, like I've said before, that's being startled. That's not being scared. They are distinctly different. Brett gets pretty distracted by looking for Jones, but he finds the shedded skin left by the creature, presumably, on the floor where he sees Jones. Brett walks into a dark room where running water can be heard, and he's calling out for Jones and lets the water dribble down on him like he's some kind of alluring woman bathing naked under a waterfall or some shit. This is a fucking masterfully delivered moment where Brett sees Jones, and as he leans down to try and draw the cat to him, we see the fully grown alien come down from the ceiling silently behind him. This alien is now fucking huge, like taller than the average man, and we get a decent look at its massive head and mouth, and it flares its teeth. Then, of course, it gets set to fuck up Brett pretty aggressively. Brett turns around and is face to face with the giant alien, and he's staring right into its mouth. And you can see that it has a bizarre little mouth inside its mouth, and it flares both sets of teeth as Brett freaks right the fuck out. The alien snags Brett, and it keeps cutting to Jones, just casually watching him get scooped up toward the ceiling and presumably killed. The next thing you see is Dallas reacting to Parker and Ripley telling the story of what happened to Brett and talking about how massive the creature was and that it seemed to take Brett up into the air shaft for whatever reason. Lambert asks if Brett might possibly still be alive, but Ripley says no, or at least that she doesn't believe that it's very likely the creature would keep him alive for any reason after what it did to him. Ripley lets her frustrations with Ash shine through again, as Dallas says that if the creature is in the air shaft, it might work to their advantage because there are very few ways out, and they could likely force the creature into the airlock and force it out of the ship. He says the only place it could get out before the airlock is a maintenance opening in the shaft. Ripley insists that Ash should be able to help with the use of science, and Ash suggests that most animals are known to retreat from fire, so Dallas has Parker rig up 3 or 4 incinerator units. Lambert asks who will be going into the vents, and Ripley says that she will, but Dallas shuts her down and says she's going with Ash, and she's going to take the main airlock with him. Then he instructs Lambert and Parker to go close up the maintenance opening in the shaft. Ripley gives Dallas the most aggressive death stare as he again pisses her off by making her do what he feels like making her do, seemingly just to oppose her wishes and ideas. But what I find baffling is how positive they all appear to be that the creature not only went up into this fucking air shaft, but also stayed there the whole time that they were gathered around to have this conversation about it. It's like, why do they think it wouldn't go anywhere? Like, couldn't it have just gone and stashed Brett in that vent and fled? when the coast was clear. Dallas goes to the computer to basically ask for advice, which doesn't work out well because Mother doesn't really have enough info and can't really compute anything to help him. This movie is so painfully dark so much of the time, which is necessary plot wise, that I felt compelled to mention it. And it's not like just dark in subject matter, but in overall dimly lit shots throughout. And it provides great effect because obviously Ridley Scott didn't want you to see the whole creature at any given time, usually, or not entirely. And so basically, this dim lighting really helps to hide what's going on and what could be seen in a fully lit room. Ash and Ripley venture off to the airlock and make sure it's open while Lambert manages to bring them up on this radar tracker thing. Dallas is seen crawling through the air shaft holding what looks like a torch, but I guess it's one of those incinerators that Parker made. It's basically like a flamethrower. I don't know if you've ever seen in a movie or anything where a flamethrower is being used, but generally there's like a tiny little torch that remains on at the end so that you can throw the flames because obviously you don't want to have to ignite it every time you're using it. When Dallas reaches a certain point, he tells Ripley over the radio to start closing off the access behind him so as to isolate the creature, presumably, and prevent it from attacking Dallas and escaping. Lambert locates the creature on her tracker and tells Dallas where it is and tells him to be careful because it's very close to him, and it's in the third junction, which is essentially meaningless to the audience, but it's pretty clear that it's close to him. It gets very intense as Lambert can no longer see the creature on the tracker, and she assumes it must be right there with Dallas. Like the blips on her screen are basically both the creature and Dallas. But in an intense sequence with tensions very high, Dallas keeps igniting his flamethrower to light up the area around him, but the creature really isn't visible at all. Suddenly, Dallas says over the radio he wants to get out of the fucking shaft, and all of a sudden, Lambert can see another dot again, and it appears to be stalking toward Dallas, but he can't really see the creature at all, no matter where he looks. Lambert becomes frantic as she cries out, urging him to get the hell out of there. And suddenly, something obviously happens, but it's unclear what, and Ripley yells out to Dallas, but he's no longer responding. It cuts to Parker after they regroup, and he's explaining that he went in to find Dallas. There was no blood, and Dallas was nowhere to be found in this shaft. Tempers are flaring, and emotions are running high as Ripley suggests that they still follow through with Dallas's original plan with the air shaft. Lambert is a nervous wreck and tells Ripley she's talking crazy, thinking that they should keep doing this, and what they should actually do is try and escape on the shuttle and hope that they luck out and someone manages to find them and pick them up. But Ripley tells her the shuttle can't support all four of them, and Lambert says that they should draw straws, but Parker says he's not fucking doing that, and he just wants to kill the fucking alien and move on with his life. It's amazing how real the intensity is in this scene as Ripley tries to discuss like a logical way to kill the creature, and she's screaming at Parker to shut the fuck up just to try and have a civil discussion about it. And regardless, Ripley suggests basically still going through with Dallas's plan and using the air shafts to force the creature out by splitting up into pairs. One weird thing here, I don't know if it's the camera or what, but Veronica Cartwright's eyes are so stunningly blue in these scenes where they're talking, and it just captivates me. Ripley sends Parker off to refuel the incinerators and then again fucking lays into Ash for being a useless piece of shit. She asks him if there are any ideas from him or Mother, and he says that they are still collating like he did earlier, and she is legitimately shocked that he actually has like no fucking ideas about what to do at all. So she dismissively tells him that she has access to Mother now and can get her own answers, and he like scurries away from her. She goes to the room where Dallas was previously to talk to Mother and asks about what to do with her science officer's inability to neutralize the alien. But the response from Mother is that the response is for the science officer's eyes only, so Ripley overrides the clearance to see the message, and you can tell Ripley is very worked up by the weird secrecy and knows something has to be going on. Mother reveals Nostromo's true mission, which is that the ship was intentionally rerouted to new coordinates to investigate the new life form and gather a specimen. First priority is to ensure the return of the organism for analysis, and it says that all other considerations are secondary and that the crew is considered expendable in accomplishing this mission. As Ripley reacts with utter frustration, she leans back in her chair and Ash is revealed to be right next to her, and he startles her by claiming there is an explanation for all this. Ripley fucking grabs his collar and yells at him that she wants an answer, not an explanation, and she storms out of the room and tries to find Parker and Lambert. They don't respond, and she realizes that she can't get out of the last door, and she tells Ash to open the door for her, but he doesn't say anything and he just glares at her. Unbeknownst to Ripley, Ash has a strange, creamy substance leaking down his temple, and he begins to physically attack her as she attempts to flee from him, and he knocks her over. So it's pretty clear Ash is going apeshit and has incredible, almost superhuman strength. He wads up a book or magazine or something and begins forcing it into Ripley's mouth. Just in the nick of time, Parker and Lambert appear, and Parker tries to stop Ash, but Ash is too strong for Parker to stop him. Parker finally hits Ash with a tank the size of a small fire extinguisher, and Ash flips out and starts spasming and spitting out the milky substance. Then Parker legitimately hits him in the fucking face, and his head flies off with a little piece attached like he's fucking nearly headless Nick or some shit. Parker tries to keep hitting him, and he proclaims that Ash appears to be a damn robot, as Ash's body is now a big mess on the floor, and there's all this goopy fluid and all these wires and stuff. Ripley figures they should jumpstart the robot because maybe the robot would know how to kill the alien. Ripley yells at the reanimated Ash and asks him what his mission was, and Ash spits up more of the milky goop and is like, I thought you fucking read it pretty clearly that the mission was that we were supposed to bring back the creature and all other priorities were rescinded, including that of the crew's lives. She asks him how to kill it, but Ash says it can't be killed, and he says this great fucking cold ass line: You still don't understand what you're dealing with, do you? A perfect organism. Its structural perfection is matched only by its hostility. Lambert accuses Ash of admiring the creature, but he clarifies that he admires its purity. He basically tells them they have no fucking chance and tells them smugly that they have his sympathy before he, deactivates again. They decide to take their chances on the shuttle so they can blow up the ship when they jettison. Ripley goes to ready the shuttle while Lambert and Parker get the ship prepared to detonate, but they have less than 10 minutes after they start the sequence. As Lambert tries to get things ready, Parker covers her with his weapon. Ripley is readying the shuttle and hears Jones meow over an intercom and goes to look for the cat for some weird reason, despite what great risk it will be. Parker and Lambert are making a big fucking ruckus as they get the ship ready to explode and collect supplies. Ripley begins looking for the cat in the world's most terrifying and dimly lit room, but she finally finds Jones and puts him in a little cage that is basically the size of a footlocker. And to be clear, I mean a literal, army footlocker, not one that's like the size of a shoe store in the mall. Back with Lambert and Parker, it's pretty fucking clear that an attack from the alien is imminent for them. They can't possibly last much longer doing what they're doing out in the open. Sure enough, the massive creature stands up and confronts Lambert as Parker urges her to get the fuck out of the way so he can get the fucking alien with his weapon, and is forced to rush toward her to intervene. The alien turns and takes out Parker as you get a pretty gruesome close up of it flaring its inner and outer teeth, but you can't really see much else. Then it also takes out Lambert, and Ripley can only hear stuff on the intercom, and she knows that she has to get the fuck out of there. She heads over and attempts to get the self destruct on the ship going as an emergency buzzer goes off, and she manages to initiate the sequence and runs awkwardly toward the shuttle. And there's this intense strobe light going as she makes her way down the corridor and spots the alien and legitimately freaks the fuck out and tries to stay still so it doesn't notice that she's there. Luckily, this alien has no fucking eyes, otherwise, everyone in this movie would have been fucked like instantly. The alien basically stares Ripley down as she flees back the way she came and tries to stop the self destruct. And there's less than a minute left. Like, the window to override the sequence expires as Ripley only has 5 minutes to get away before it's going to self destruct for real. She carefully crawls back up with an incinerator in hand as she saunters down the corridor again. While looking around for the alien, she finds Jones locked in the little cage where she left him and takes him to the shuttle with her. Fires begin igniting on the ship as Ripley desperately boards the shuttle, and she only has 1 minute to get out before the explosion. She straps into her seat with plenty of time as the shuttle takes off and the ship explodes behind her, and you're like, oh, thank fuck, that was a close one, but also shockingly not as close as it probably could have been. And it almost seems like that would have been more intense if it was the final push. But wait, there's more. So Ripley watches the ship explode behind her and quietly proclaims, I got you, you son of a bitch, as she lays exhausted. Then she gets Jones out and hugs him and puts him in a stasis chamber to put him into cryo sleep. Ripley begins stripping off articles of clothing, and I get way too distracted by this non nude but fairly captivating and mildly erotic moment. She is just like casually adjusting settings as she all of a sudden sees an arm flip down in front of her, and she screams quite loud because it's the alien's arm. She attempts to hide from it as she watches the alien slowly crawling out of its hiding spot, and she tries to casually slip on a little spacesuit for reasons then unknown. She even throws on a little helmet and grabs a weapon and slides over and starts working some controls and starts forcing the alien out by discharging a bunch of gases around it. She feels the alien get closer, and when it gets close enough, she opens the door and the alien is getting sucked out but is holding on somehow. And I think it's like actually tethered in some way. She shoots it with what I guess is like a space grappling hook and forces it out into space. And then she sees it start to try and get in through the thrusters, and she fires the engines, and the alien seemingly dies out in space after being incinerated. Pretty fucking bad out there. She does her final log for Nostromo and explains that all of the crew are dead, and she locks herself in the pod and goes into stasis with her bestie Jones. And we roll credits. So, trivia for this movie, according to Yaphet Kotto, Sir Ridley Scott told him to annoy Sigourney Weaver off camera so that there would be genuine tension between their characters. Kotto regretted this because he really liked Weaver. Like, yeah, I mean, she's fucking Sigourney Weaver, for fuck's sake. Sir Ridley Scott did all of the handheld camera work himself. Copywriter Barbara Gips came up with a famed tagline used in posters and promotional materials, which is, in space, no one can hear you scream. The first day that she shot a scene involving Jones, the cat, Sigourney Weaver's skin started reacting badly. Horrified, the young actress immediately thought that she might be allergic to cats, and that it would be easier for the production to recast her instead of trying to find 4 more identical cats. But as it turned out, Weaver was actually reacting to glycerin sprayed on her skin to make her look hot and sweaty. Director Ridley Scott originally wanted to use animatronics, remote operated puppets, to portray the alien, thereby hoping to avoid the sight of a monster being obviously played by a man in a suit. Unfortunately, the special effects techniques at the time weren't sophisticated enough for what he had in mind, but he agreed to an actor playing the part after being introduced to Balaji Badejo. Badejo was a graphic artist who was discovered at a pub by one of the casting directors. He was 208 centimeters tall, which is 6 feet almost 10 inches tall, with very thin arms, just what they needed to make the alien look less human and more insect like. He was sent for Tai Chi and mime classes to learn how to slow down his movements, and a special swing was constructed for him to rest on during filming, as he couldn't sit on a regular chair once suited up because of the alien's tail. A suit was also made for a stuntman for more complex movements, but nevertheless, Scott kept the screen time of the alien limited to hide its human configuration. The creature is never filmed directly facing the camera due to the humanoid features of its face. Sir Ridley Scott, determined at all costs to dispel any notion of a man in a rubber suit, filmed the beast in varying close up angles of its ghastly profile, very rarely capturing the beast in its entirety. The slime that they used on the alien was KY jelly. The original cut of this movie ran 3 hours and 12 minutes. 20th Century Fox doubled the budget from 4.2 million to 8.4 million on the strength of seeing Sir Ridley Scott's storyboards. And he actually made those storyboards, from what I hear, while he was waiting for them to determine what the budget was going to be. To preserve the shock value of the alien's appearance, no production images of it were released, not even to author Alan Dean Foster when he wrote the novelization. Sir Ridley Scott cites 3 movies as the shaping influences on this movie: Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope from 1977 and 2001 A Space Odyssey from 1968 for their depiction of outer space, and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974 for its treatment of horror. Originally, the Nostromo was painted a dull yellow, but Sir Ridley Scott was unhappy with the final look and ordered all model shots be dumped and the Nostromo repainted battleship gray. Director Sir Ridley Scott and writers Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett wanted H.R. Geiger to design the alien creatures based on drawings from his book Necronomicon, but they had some difficulties in convincing the studio to actually use his artwork. Executives were initially appalled by Geiger's dark and disturbing imagery, but Scott's insistence finally won them over. Even so, Geiger's designs had to be changed several times because of their blatant sexuality. The spacesuits worn by Tom Skerritt, Sir John Hurt, and Veronica Cartwright were huge, bulky items lined with nylon and with no outlets for breath or condensation. As the actors and actresses were working under hot studio lights in conditions in excess of 100 degrees Fahrenheit, they spent most of their time passing out. A nurse had to be on hand at all times to keep supplying them with oxygen. It was only after Sir Ridley Scott's cinematographer Derek Van Lint's children were used in the suits for long shots and they passed out too that some modifications were actually made to these costumes, which is crazy. Also, one little tidbit that wasn't really in my trivia readings, but it was just something I determined, was there is a director's cut version of this film and there is the theatrical cut that I watched. They say that the director's cut actually removes a decent amount of scenes from the theatrical cut and adds never before seen scenes, which is typical of a director's cut. But they basically, there's no like fan consensus that one version is particularly better than the other. People like certain things about each one because of the unique scenes in each of them, but nobody's like really sold on it. And when I looked, I already own the theatrical cut of this movie and I didn't own the director's cut, and the director's cut was like full price $20, 19.99 or some shit. And I was like, yeah, I'm not sold enough on the director's cut to actually purchase it right now, but I'll be fine with the theatrical cut anyway, because that's typically what I prefer to do, is to watch the theatrical because I think that's the one most people will watch. All right, on to info and ratings. Opening weekend, 3.5 million. Worldwide gross, 109.1 million. IMDb rating, 8.5. Letterboxd rating, 4.3. Rotten Tomato critics score, 93%. Rotten Tomato audience score, 94%. Personal rating, 5 out of 5 stars. Praise for this movie. This movie is masterful in using the darkness to keep the tension and scariness levels pretty fucking high. The limited shots of the creature were greatly effective in making it more terrifying. All of the performances were top notch, and the actors all brought exactly what needed to be brought with these characters. Criticism, although some of his decisions don't really allow for this to be a true theory, I feel like Dallas had to be at least somewhat in on Ash's plot because he fucked so much stuff up, and the only way the decisions really make sense is if he was a part of the plan to get the creature and like he had some awareness of what was going on. It would make more sense if he only knew a part of the ulterior motives and objectives of the real mission with the Nostromo. But like I say, it's just a thing. Maybe it was like part of a rewrite and they were just like, oh, well, maybe he's just an asshole or an idiot and he wants to do things a certain way. Whatever. All right, everyone. Thank you for stopping by. I do appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day. Bye now.
What you hoped you would see. He's half blind, with hats tight, with all the dates of release. For Footloose, The Dark Knight, a Kurt Russell, Brain Freeze, Rear Windows, and Gaslights. I'm Billy and you're Meg. Sharon Stone, the legs spread. The park starts with the eggs. It won't stop till you're dead. I'm here to welcome you to Brandon around the reviews. No method when I choose. It's Brandon around the reviews. You're looking for a man with no plans or programs. If you're looking for a man with no plans or programs, and he always leaves a chance to hold hands for romance, or you're looking for the loop with an old man or cold hands, it's a creature of the night who heads for his spotlight. I'm here for my flea, oh, for his diet. I'm here to welcome you to Brandon and Ronald.